Hey, Charlie. Hey? Hello, dear viewer. We're just in that hazard warning storm. Whoop, whoop, alert, alert. Nature exists. The unconscious feedback from the other worrying global thing happening, which isn't necessarily worrying. Now, that's a word on my forehead. It's called sparrow. I think it might be Greek for freedom. Anyway, it's a tinfoil hat. Yeah, true. It's got silver in it. It's a silver fabric. It's reasonably expensive, but common now. The silver is EMF protection. What's EMF, you say, New Zealand person? Electromagnetic frequency. Which it's well known. James is going to go into a little bit of a informed, what most of you would consider paranoid rant. But just reading in a book about the microwave experiments in the 70s to do with the Branch Davidians and Waco and the kind of subliminal programming they could do with technology even back then. And indeed they could implant voices subliminally through mediums like telephone lines and FM radio, and they tried all sorts of things to people with success. So it's a state-of-the-art, hypnagogic, hypnotized culture we live in at the moment, my friends. Make no mistake. Our thoughts may not be our own. Being aware of that, of course, is a thought. Awareness is a different kettle of fish. That's God-given. But that's not the subject of my inspired rant. In these revelatory apocalyptic moments, I do reflect on the folly of my career as an artist, and as a weaponized boy in a micro form of a civilisational cultural war. I mean, some of you may have heard me talk about being experimented on as a kid, psychologically, by a mentally ill man. And although I'm not going to go into details here, that domestic war environment, the gender war, the possession, who gets to possess, who gets to program the identities in the family, who gets to control the narrative. Who gets to control the narrative of you? Who gets to sculpt you? Yeah, and that big mythic word that, you know, we all resort to in a sort of emblematic, mythic way, that word love. That word love. Something women do with their kids, apparently. Even if they're really bad mothers, there's still a shit ton of chemicals that happen in both the bodies of the parent and child. Some would call that divine. Others would call it a biochemical survival mechanism of a species. Regardless of that mystery, and I'm not intending to denigrate or attack that whatsoever. I think that should be cultivated and expanded upon, and but in my particular case, art as a sort of genetic play, art as a sort of biological memory enacting the sandpit, art as a sort of reclamation of an inner self, when an inner self had been violated and taken over, confusion of identity, and art as a sort of immune system of psychological protection and memory, bringing through deeper veins of ancestor and purpose. So, I think in a funny way, of course, one, dies if one does not have love. It's basically sort of a mammalian. Even my cat demonstrates that to me all the time. She wants my physical attention. She wants my physical heat. She's very pragmatic, Charlie. It's all about what works for her. She is a girl. Fortunately, there's plenty of meat here to make her warm. My thigh seems to be the occupancy pad at the moment that works for her on her terms. But what I'm getting at is that often artists attempt to display tokens of love through this inner world in a hostile environment, which could have originally been the home, and certainly was in my case. And so, the heart, of course, gets burdened with other people's sins, and quite disproportionately to one even knowing who one is, and you could spend the rest of your life working out identity issues to do with who you are and who your brutal, wounded, corrupted parents were. And then, of course, you yourself become brutal, corrupted, and confused in exactly who you are. Even into your 50s, even, possibly. So, I think what I'm talking about is very normal. I don't necessarily think it's a mental illness. I think it's the terrain of a culturally infested colonial country with a whole lot of abuse scenarios, a whole lot of class structure, a whole lot of class violence, a whole lot of empire violence, and a whole lot of amnesia around what we really truly are. And a whole lot of whitewashing with virtue signalling from a bogus religion, which is really just another form of fascist mind control. I'm not saying that the idea of Christ isn't a great idea, or indeed we don't have a divine spark. I believe we all do. That's probably why things function as much as they do. But when it comes to New Zealand and culture and art, regardless of the Arts Foundation or any of the other little potted gardens of designer culture, our backyard's a fucking mess. We got DDT everywhere, we got invasive plants, we've got shit rodents eating native birds. That's a backyard garden analogy. I've got invasive, weeds on every side of my property, and I haven't had the physical wherewithal to actually attack them this summer. And that's not even mentioning my footpath, which has the most corrosive problem I face, which is the locals just out my door. I quite like people, but what I'm sort of saying is my culture is sort of Cro-Magnon, with its ability to understand the midden of the heart, the cultural legacy of being a colonial power and a abject, disestablished tribal and village people from England or Ireland or Europe or wherever the fuck we're from, you know, like we've been abducted slave class refugees who have all been given tickets in the evil empire for so long now that we, you know, will work for the oppressor, and I'm not happy about that. I don't think that that's who we are. So, you know, maybe through my damage and my family's damage and my memory and awareness of that on multiple levels, and that art is an intuitive memory to the broader beyond of ancestor and some timeless place around whole self, true self. How do you show art in a culture that is actually anti-culture? How do you have a heart? How do you love in this place? Ignorant, hostile environment, Kafkaesque bureaucracy. How would one dream one's best ability to continue? Sorry, I only make masterpieces. You know, like that. You know, oh, you want the merchandise, you want the coffee cup, you want the coffee cup and the tissue, you want the toilet paper roll version of my art. With the picture on it, you want the Bill Hammond handkerchief, as opposed to the glory of a divine astral dimension. Yeah, so, and yet, you know, the qualities of New Zealand, its elemental beauty, its innocence of its people, and its openness of its people, but the invasive species, both mentally and in our hearts, and certainly culturally, are inhibitory, almost like a computer virus, one might say. So, yeah, look, I'm up for an art residency in Tehran. Or Moscow. Probably even Beijing or Shanghai, for that matter. I've been dealing with despair and crushing. It's hard to see a future here that doesn't pierce its genitals and grow titties. I don't think we replace our population. We import population. So Western decline. Multipolar world. My next work is called Multipolar World. It's a hybrid further sculptural investigation into rigid structures, pulling together the broken bits into intentional verticals on the dimensional axis, and then using them in a sort of more of a 3D forest-like way into a physical space. And there's nowhere to do that. There's no interest, and yet, like I still see it as a psycho-totemic necessary sort of thing for me to do, as a taboo outsider male, white male. Well, I've got quite olive skin actually, and I've been getting a good tan this summer, because The UVs, the not the UVs, the other Vs, the infrareds in the sun, good for healing tendons and backs and nervous systems and things like that. So that's my heart-based corredo around art and heart. I believe the child attempts to love through its creation, which is a direct link to source and the infinite possibility of this unimaginably vast and beautiful universe that I am a microcosm of, and that the divine intelligence does reside in me, unmediated, imperfect, and evolutionary and adaptive. So the story continues. Yeah. And with reverence and great blessings to the martyrs in the holy war against great Satan. Yeah. Having said that, being created by great Satan myself, it's arguably an identity issue, really. And I don't consider myself a Christian, and I probably never will. Although, I do understand and have a parallel respect for the spiritual truths in all creeds. And I'm sure Judaism has probably been hijacked and corrupted by nefarious elements within there too, because that's the way the empire works. It inverts and mimics. So nothing is what it seems. We are in the upside down world, and the light might be within. Alright, I'm trying to end this out in a smooth and beautiful way. See ya, God bless.